And we can do it in Defuniak if
Okay.
that's easier.
It's up to you.
Okay. Either works for me. We'll figure it out.
Is that where you're based?
Well, I'm based, I got a house down here and a house up there, so I'm kind of based in both places,
I
yeah.
think they're gonna request that, yeah.
Based in the county, I guess that's the
And
best way to
they
say
might
it.
also request the workshop be put off until October as well. Because I have more work to do, unfortunately.
Actually, Spirit is there.
Oh, good.
And then I realized it was the same.
Yeah.
Reverse channel lettering.
Yeah, so I think staff is gonna ask that both of those items be the workshop
Yeah.
and both of the workshops.
Okay.
And the ordinance.
I'm really lost.
I've got that for you guys. I'm gonna let you see it
Right here.
during the updates. The Acton Moisture House.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know what a reverse channel letter is.
In fact, I'll go ahead and pass it down.
It's off. And it's got like a
So
hand.
have it. Just leave one for David and Tom, I guess. Yeah.
Where are those boys?
Thank you.
Can't you manually in
Requirements that have that.
for the minute? How fast glue? Oh, okay. It doesn't matter so much for the video recording, just the minutes. Yeah, no, I know, but maybe there's a way to do it after the fact. Okay.
You got into your order and took all the food. Because everybody's buying food. And so they took all the food away and they said they can't do it.
Okay.
They finally, they did get some delivered it to them today. So she said she was able to get it, you know, and then finishing all of that.
Oh, Lord, good luck.
Yeah, it's all interesting.
One of those towns where, you know,
Just take one.
Just take one and pass it down. Yeah.
sorry, but it's a ball, but we're happy.
That's how I was during Aaron and Opal. Yeah.
Karen, are we waiting for a little bit longer, or are we ready to go?
We're ready whenever you are. I think Tom,
Is-
Lourdes is not gonna be here. Okay, so we
Okay.
can go ahead and get started.
Okay, very good. All right. Okay, in that case, I will call the September 7th, 2017 meeting of the Design Review Board to order. And our first order of business is to consider the minutes of the last meeting, which would be the August 3rd, 2017 meeting. Do we have any questions or concerns, alterations?
I move we approve.
Properly motioned. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other questions or concerns? Any comments from staff? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved unanimously. Next item is announcements.
We have a few announcements. So first and foremost, Mr. Crystal is our new Design Review Board member. Thank you, Mr. Crystal, for being here.
Welcome.
I believe staff is gonna ask for continuances on items number 1 and 10. Is that right, Matt? 10 is the workshop. I guess so 10 can be here.
Yeah, I think that's what he would like to request. Staff does request that we continue item number 1, the farmer's market ordinance, to the October DRB meeting, which is on October 5th.
Okay, so we need to do those separately so we can continue them to, or do we continue them both at the same meeting in the same?
Whichever you prefer. You could
Okay.
like it together or separate.
All right, well, I guess we're going to continue them both to the October
October 5.
5 meeting. Okay.
this location at 5 PM.
Would anyone like to make
So
that
moved.
motion? Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? Do we open that one to the public?
Sure. if
Any
anybody-
comments from the public on those items? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And then, just real quickly, you guys all have a letter that I wrote to Dawn Stuntz, who represents the Acme Oyster House. This came about after our meeting last time, some of the confusion about the master signage plan. It's a very long letter, very confusing, because it was a confusing issue. But you guys look at it. If you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. The master signage plan did allow for signage on the canopies. However, the size restriction still applied. So essentially, the canopies on the front of the building that had the words oysters and gumbo, those would have been allowed by the master signage plan and did not require deviation from the board. So those would have been approved. The canopy, though, that had the, I guess the name logo was larger than what was required, so that still would have required a deviation from the board. But other than the gumbo canopies, there's no difference based on the action that you guys took.
So everything they asked for, they got except for the sign on the front of the canopy.
I believe so,
Okay.
yes.
Are they
And that was either because you guys granted a deviation or a deviation wasn't
Right.
required because of the master signage plan.
And if they do it smaller, can they?
Yes.
They can do that.
Yes.
They just can't do it larger. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, staff, we have any other announcements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that brings us, I believe, to the items to be heard. We've continued item number 1. Item number 2 is the Walmart color deviation. This agenda doesn't tell me who's introducing it, so.
Yeah, we got 2 Walmart items. First would be a deviation for color, and then we'll have site plan approval and design development plan approval on their actual project. And if we could take, the deviation comes behind the project in my book, but we do need to address the deviation before the project because one is contingent upon the other.
Okay, everyone okay with that? Do we want to have a, I guess like a lot of these 2-part items, should we get a presentation on both items and then we'll come back to considering whichever
It's your
sequence?
pleasure. Which would you like?
Do y'all want to hear about the whole project, you know, the whole, both items, and then we'll come back and take action?
What if we're considering both?
Yeah, okay.
Does one affect the other?
Well, the color deviation. Approval of design development plan is subject to approval of the color deviation.
Okay. I mean,
So if we can just deal with the color deviation first and then the rest of the project, but we can hear it however it would best be presented to you. And it might be best to hear what the project is
that's
so you can see where the colors go.
exactly right. Yes, thank you.
This is the Walmart liquor box expansion. It's been reviewed by Tim Brown. He would be here, except we've sent him to a planning conference in Daytona, and they were supposed to be gone until Saturday, but they're having to evacuate because of the evacuees that are coming up from South Florida. So he'll be back for next month. This is a development or application requesting approval to expand the existing liquor box at Walmart by 5,048 square feet, which would bring the entire building development to 83,338 square feet on 10.15 acres. Land use is still Town Center 2. There is a major development order application to amend this PUD to allow the transfer of the additional square footage to this particular parcel. So that will be going on also, and this approval will also be going up to the BCC, and it will be subject to the PUD amendment that provides for the additional intensity for the site. But for our purpose today, we're looking at site plan approval and then the development design approval, or what does it look like, and the color deviation. prepared to present their item.
I'm Kyle Miller with PB2 Architects. I'm here for the color deviation on the.
Oh, sir, can you push the button on your microphone? Thank you. What was your name?
Kyle Miller with PB2 Architecture and Engineering.
And I'm Yvonne with CPH, representing the liquor box expansion.
Alrighty, on the color deviation, we're proposing to rebrand the store to Walmart's new national branding, which is gray, multiple colors of gray, as well as a blue sign badge behind the main Walmart ID badge in the front of the store, similar to the store in Fort Walton. It was recently painted.
Do we have a picture in here of the one in Fort Walton?
I was told that y'all were provided that. I apologize if you weren't. My office said they.
I think we have the existing
We have the existing, but
color, yeah.
yes.
It's also been painted in Destin, hasn't it?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
In the next insert for the liquor box expansion, we have both color selections, the existing elevations of the existing color scheme and the proposed, if you approve the proposed change.
And I have an extra packet, which should have the color samples, so I'll pass that down.
Oh.
It'll be easier for you guys.
So the sample that we have in here is an actual? So these are actually the colors that's,
Yes.
Color samples are in there too.
All right. They look pretty good on the computer one, so does anyone else want to see the hard copies?
Yeah.
I mean, we can, y'all can share that one.
Put it in the faces. Donna, you got one right there, yes,
Yeah.
sir. Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
That's what it is now.
Mac, I do have a couple questions that I'll direct to you, and then if the applicant, it's the best for the applicant to answer, that's great, but I'm going to give Mac a first shot at responding. On the liquor box expansion, the site plan that we're provided doesn't appear, it includes some landscaping. I see a section that shows a tree planting scheme, but I'm not sure that I see where. Oh, I understand now. Okay, I'm sorry. When I looked at it initially, I didn't understand the fences were temporary. These are temporary construction protection fences. So those are existing trees.
Are you
Is
looking
that
at
true?
L1?
Yes, L1, the drawing we were provided tonight.
Yes, the ones with the fence around it are existing, so that's tree protection fencing.
Okay.
And then
And
the ones without are proposed.
are proposed. Okay, so there's, looks like, there's kind of a handful of them spread around the corners there. So, okay. So, Mac, and again, I realize that Tim probably put this together while he was in town, but, is that, do you have a copy of this? Oh, I can give mine up.
There's two.
Oh, here's Tom's.
Okay.
There you go.
And I realize as an attachment to a large building, 5,000 square feet is not proportionally a whole lot, but it's not an insignificant addition, so from a staff perspective, is this, the landscaping, is that an acceptable
Well, there's
modification?
This project really doesn't impact the existing landscaping
Landscaping, okay.
significantly. There's a minor amount. That was the least significant portion of this project.
Yeah, okay.
The
But it's
buffer trees already meet the buffer requirement.
Yeah,
Then there are 3 cypress trees being removed and 2 of them are being replaced. And those are island tree, one per island
Yep.
tree requirement.
they're within the footprint of the addition? I mean, the existing trees are in the
Right.
footprint of the addition, so you're replacing them somewhere else.
They're relocating that.
Okay. And I know we kind of get into the edges. I'm not asking the question from the perspective of stormwater capacity, et cetera. That's the technical review committee's deal, but this doesn't trigger any sort of modifications to the stormwater. Was that all part of the original master plan for the site, the PUD for the site?
This was all previously impervious surface,
Okay.
so there is no new
No.
impervious
Okay.
surface being created that's not of a de minimis nature.
Okay. And then the last question is, we've got quite a few parking spaces going away and quite a additional footprint. They had excess capacity in parking, so this is not generating any.
They had excess capacity in the original approved parking. However, they are asking for a parking deviation as part of the PUD amendment to reduce the requirement. And they're providing a parking study that is specific to this particular Walmart to the Planning Commission for their consideration.
Okay. And Madam Attorney, although I think Mac just answered my question, is that any questions or concerns related to parking would be the proper purview of the Planning Commission and not us?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, any other?
I was told that
Yes, sir.
there may be they may be kind of changing the structure of the, I guess, the front of the building in some form, making it shorter, smaller,
I think it's making it larger, right?
Larger.
Right, it
It's
will be
expanding.
It's
expanded,
expanding.
and
Okay,
the features on the existing building will be continued onto the expansion.
okay. So in essence, it's gonna be the same blue as the poles. Would that be correct?
I'm sorry?
It's gonna be the same blue as the poles? In the existing
Right,
picture?
right, the bollards?
That's, yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay, I don't want to hog all the time with the staff here, but anybody else have any questions? I have a couple others now that relate to the color. Mac, I'm correct in saying that the reason for and this may sound self-evident, but the reason for the color deviation request is that this color does not meet the new, it is not one of the colors within the new expanded palette. Okay.
Is it just the blue? Or any of the colors, the grays as well?
Close, but not exactly.
But just the blue or all of the colors?
Just the blue.
Just the blue.
Okay, my question always is, when you give a deviation of any kind, how does that open it up in the future for, somebody wants to, the Smurfs want to build a building somewhere or something like that, and, they want to paint it blue and, well, you did it for Walmart.
Matt can adjust that. I'm sure he'll find the specific passage in the LDC, but our code specifically states that an approval of a deviation by this board does not,
Open the door,
yes, sir.
Pandora's box, okay.
Yes.
And this is actually in our chapter 130300 subsection E, design standards, the last paragraph. I'm sorry, subsection G, deviations, the last paragraph. Because each deviation will reflect the unique circumstances of an individual site and an individual proposed development, the deviation granted to an applicant in one case shall not be construed as establishing precedent for other such requests. Requests for deviation shall be considered on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. So,
And the criteria for the deviation should be in the staff report.
so you don't have to defend the lawsuit if we,
No, sir.
okay.
No,
And the
It's just within your
Smurfs do show up, 10 years from now, so.
And at this board, just for our audience's benefit, deviations are similar to variances, except variances are considered in Chapter 8 and they're based on a hardship. Deviations to Chapter 13 are not necessarily a hardship. It's more an appeal to the aesthetic character of the corridor. And are these deviations still in keeping with the intent of the corridor? You don't have to prove a hardship.
I think the blue looks good. I saw it on the one in Destin. I like the color. I have no problem with that color.
I think my two thoughts are, one, that, and David, you many times have found this language in the code that says colors aren't intended to draw attention or shouldn't be intended to draw attention to the building. I think this does that. And I also, when I think back to times when we've been looking at an overall development and a color scheme, we've worked really hard to not have colors that kind of stand out from all the other colors, and that it creates a nice palette that blends together. And so if you apply that concept here, I think the blue definitely does not fit in with that concept on a color palette of a building. So for those two reasons, I think, so I think it.
And I'm sorry, I should have stated this earlier for the applicant's benefit. I guess before we go too much further, just so you're aware, for a deviation to be granted by this board, it requires 4 members to vote for the deviation. Obviously, we're short a couple of members tonight. You guys are welcome to proceed tonight, knowing that we are short 2 members, or if you would prefer to continue it, that's also fine too. We may or may not have a quorum at the next meeting, though. Or, I'm sorry, we may or may not have all members at the next meeting.
My next question will be, do you have an alternative? Is there an alternative? Do Walmart have more than one, one?
In the past, what we've seen, I can't speak specifically for Walmart because they could always change their mind, but in the past, what we've seen in these scenarios is they would just paint it back to match the existing colors, since those were previously approved.
Sort of like the existing colors today follow what I was talking about earlier. They're all in a brown tan kind of a palette that goes together, but you've got some different shades, significantly different to some degree, that help have some visual variation to the building. And so when I look at this new color palette, it doesn't do that to me. So I guess my point is that one of the things that could be done is that a darker gray could be used for that section versus a bright blue to provide some variation there if they wanted that.
Am I right in saying that the blue panel on the renderings is the location of the sign itself?
Yes.
Okay, and the sign
they only place that behind the main Walmart sign.
Yeah, so then the sign is proposed to remain as is?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the signage above the extension is the grays, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we're starting to get the... Go ahead, Kevin. I was just going to say, everyone's starting to... it's one of those projects where we're all going to kind of express our opinions before I think we get to a place where we're going to vote. I'm of the opinion that this property, I think, is one that that has been referenced as being successful. It's a sign that's, I believe the sign is within the size allowed, or was it increased a little bit? Yep.
It's already bigger.
And, the project seems to have, after a lot of thought and work, turned out relatively well. And I have to say, I think the blue is taking it across the line into something that is not intended to be approvable by the code, and that's why it's a deviation. I mean, it may sound, again, self-evident, but to me, that's not insignificant. This is not a case of a project that's struggling to come up with a great design. It's one that it's there, and I'm not quite sure why we would want to consider approving this blue as a deviation. I don't see a good, strong reason for it. But as we talked about before, I'm not the maker of motions, and
we might have public comment on this one too.
Oh, absolutely, yes, understand. Oh, I do also want to recognize when we get there, and Kevin, you were about to make a comment. I don't want to cut you off. I think our tradition has been the committee gets its questions asked, and then we open it for public comment, and I think Sydney's, Madam Attorney, as we talked about before, if it's not a problem with any of y'all, I think I'd rather take the public comment before making a motion.
Fine.
Okay. And so one other observation, Kevin, once you've made your comments, we do have a letter, I think maybe y'all have recognized in the packet about a concern a member of the public has expressed. So, go ahead, Kevin.
Mr. Carpenter, my question is, do we have a precedent for a deviation of this color at all?
It won't matter.
It wouldn't matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Each deviation
Each is,
request
stands on its own? Okay.
and you would not be setting a precedent by granting one or not granting one.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to know, is there, a royal blue somewhere, or whatever color blue this is, somewhere already on the quarter?
I think we have one across the street.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of blue. Yeah. Yeah. And was that a
I believe it was.
okay. So,
I believe we have one in Miramar Beach too.
We may.
Yeah, Culver's.
That was not a deviation.
That was a deviation.
Remember, it was approved by staff.
Oh, that's right.
and I know you said they all stand on their own, but what was the thought process granting that one?
The one across the street? If you- I don't mean to.
I believe it's O'Donnell Building?
Yeah, and I was relatively new, I believe, on the board when that one was considered, and I want to say that one went through at least 2 meetings, and there was a lot of discussion about the architecture of that building. It's a somewhat more contemporary or modern architecture than many of the properties up and down this stretch of 98, and there was a lot of discussion about the color of the building, the color of the railings, the color of the glass, and after what I would describe as some consternation, it was finally approved as a deviation. I don't mind sharing, speaking just for myself, that I think it turned out to be a bit much. And that's one of the reasons I'm not inclined to vote in favor of this deviation.
And that was also pretty much a different board. Not that, just
And I
to
don't
let
remember
everybody
how many.
know.
Yeah, it
I
was.
wasn't
It was
on.
some time ago.
It was a while back. It might be even hard to figure out what the logic was.
Oh,
'Cause it's been
again,
years.
yeah, I was not in, for whatever reason, I was not representing the design community on the board at that time, but I do recall that there was a lot of discussion about the architecture of the building, so.
I would add that the main area of EFS where the sign is, that's currently the dark brown, we are proposing to paint that entire area blue, just because the blue will just go behind the sign only. So of that whole entire EFS field, there is gray areas on each side of the blue to minimize the amount of blue that's on there.
Oh, I see what, in other words, looking at I'm not sure if it's split face block or EFS, but there's a texture, and the sign is a relatively narrow panel behind this. There's a panel that's relatively narrow behind the sign.
It's not narrow. It's most of that section of the facade, if the drawings are accurate.
All of that, yeah, that's what I'm
I
saying.
believe, I believe the drawing you have doesn't show it. That's an illustration that the firm that's doing the liquor box did. The one we have, and I thought we had submitted, shows less blue than what is shown on y'all's graphic. I have it on my phone. I don't know if I can pass it to you.
Would you like to see what we're looking at?
Yeah, do you mind
Yeah,
if I
that
come
may-
up there? Yeah.
Because it looks like you got a neon sign, a whole lot of it.
So here's what, see how it's got sections of gray. So it's really,
Probably accurate. These are
Yeah.
plan set drawings.
And just so you guys know,
yeah, it wouldn't be all
Karen just
that
mentioned,
area.
it might be in the deviation tab, because there's 2 separate tabs. So I don't know if there's
There's
2
some,
depictions.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
some,
that's,
the elevation drawings, they're accurate. See if I can find an indicator on here of what, just says elevation comparison. Do you see that one? This one?
Yeah.
Down at the bottom of the page, it shows the amount, actual amount of blue.
I'm on paper, so. I'm
We
trying to
should be
catch
the
it.
same.
I hadn't seen that at all in the paper.
So it has right here.
And the scheme of the building, is that,
Yeah, right now the building, this is the building, and these are the swatches.
so this isn't in here?
Yes, it is. This is what there is now. And then these are the swatches for this. Oh, I don't know. Should be. Should be.
No, it's not in the paper.
Did you go back and that
I
located?
didn't see this
You're
before.
gonna find this.
Oh, it's a
It's on your
separate,
second tab, yeah.
There we
There,
go.
right there.
All right, thank you.
Matt, is there
Blue here.
a blue that's close that is in the book?
There are blues in the book. I haven't looked at it to see if there's one close to this. We can certainly get the book and take a look if you'd like to.
Is that something you all would be willing to do?
I could definitely take it back to my client and see if they'll approve that option, if there's one that's close.
Okay. Well, I have a question. Is the liquor box expansion project contingent, it proceeding contingent on the color deviation being approved, to your knowledge?
No, sir.
No, okay. So there is obviously going to be some time that the liquor box expansion would take to build, so if we want to let the applicant meet with staff and see if there's a possibility of coming up with a color that is within the scope of what is allowed by the code, certainly continuing this item tonight would probably be a good way of accomplishing that.
We need a motion for that?
Yes.
I would just say
Oh.
we'd still have that
Yep.
same consideration of colors
Yeah.
working together and not drawing attention or attempting to draw attention to the sign or building or whatever.
Okay, and not to cut anybody off, but just before anyone does a motion in play, we talked about allowing public comment if there was any before we
But
made a
also,
motion.
I just want to clarify with Mac too, when are they set for planning commission? Do you know, Mac?
Planning commission next week.
Okay, so the deviation wouldn't need to be considered before planning commission, but the
That's what he's
expansion would.
Yeah, okay.
I
Yeah,
think
the
that's
site
what-
plan approval and the development design approval are the two things that will come next. But
Yeah.
the deviation could come later and even before it gets all the way to the BCC,
Yep, okay.
which will probably be October.
Okay. All right, with that, any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
How much parking, I know that that's not our purview, but how much parking is that gonna take away from, you know, they're gonna have to have.
It might have been in the letter. What would that letter be? The public.
We're taking 41 parking spaces.
How many do we have that are handicap?
There's currently 343, so it'll go down to 302. And that will be a 3.62 per 1,000 square foot parking ratio. And based on our parking study, maximum needed is 2.38.
Oh, okay.
And where is the letter you were talking about? There was a letter.
It's in the online version that I'm looking at. I can read it for the record if it's a relatively short letter. Stated August 30th, 2017, addressed to the Walton County Design Review Board, and says, I am writing to oppose and offer an alternative to the proposed Walmart liquor box expansion / project, and then the project number. My family lives on West Hewitt Road in Santa Rosa Beach. We have seen a growing problem with traffic generated by the Walmart store. West Hewitt Road, Dune Lakes Drive, and Highway 98 have been backed up because of the short ingress-egress into the parking lot. The proposed liquor box expansion will only exacerbate this problem and poses a threat to pedestrians and vehicles. I have proposed that the store be located on the west side of the property, which has less traffic and may encourage more use of the Highway 98 entrance. Please see the attached letters and documentation to further clarify the issues. I respectfully request that this project be delayed until a peak season traffic and intersection analysis can be done. Feel free to contact me with any questions you may have. Signed, Tammy Eby, I believe, and then her address and contact info. And
But is it retention and all of that on the west side of the building?
The stormwater pond is on the west side of the building. There is a parking area also on the west side of the building, as shown on the plan in the.
Is there enough space to put it on that side of the
The
building?
problem with the west side is an electrical easement, and the electrical lines and more utilities on that side as well. Because we did consider that.
You ready?
And this letter goes on, there's quite several pages of attachments relating to the code and some analysis of the code. So, okay, are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Yes, ma'am, please come forward and state your name for the record.
I'm Tammy Eby, that you just read about, and I live at 321 West Hewitt Road, so very close to this project. Tonight, I want to, in addressing the color deviation, respectfully request that you guys deny this color variation, or deviation, I should say. In the Scenic Corridor Guidelines of the Land Development Code, under purpose and intent, it talks about how architecture should flow. It should flow easily. There should be a high quality, and you should discourage, in fact, colors that appear flashy or intrusive. Now, when it comes to the quality of design, this deviation does not have a harmonious relationship with the structure. And I apologize, I was not aware that Walmart intended to also change the base color of the project to the gray. So I was assuming they were only going to do the fascia in the neon blue and then maintain the tan. So some of my notes that I've written are completely accurate, but I know that in the staff report, Mr. Brown wrote that he felt that this was harmonious, that he agreed with that idea, and that in fact it would somehow bring enjoyment or pleasure to the community, of which I strongly don't agree with. But in the immediate area, I think the bigger question is, what are the development standards and what does the community look like? We have Grand Boulevard, we have Sacred Heart, we have Silver Sands. These are all communities that have done a great job in limiting their obtrusiveness. You don't see flashy colors, you don't see big signs, you see beautiful landscape, you see neutral colors and lowlights, things that you would expect to see in a beach community. You still know these projects are there, without question. This is going to be the first big box or major retailer in South Walton. This is, in fact. And this color deviation does set a precedent for what's to come in the future. I truly believe that. Last year, Walmart did, in fact, unveil their plans for a strategy to change their corporate branding colors on the exterior of their stores. And I do have, actually, probably a more, if you don't mind, comprehensive picture of what those colors look like. And this is, of course, coming from their website. So you can see the battleship gray that's on the base of the building, and then, of course, the neon blue for the top. And they are wanting to incorporate this peak structure so it kind of looks like a house.
I'm not as young as I used to be. Can I look at that?
You certainly can. I also included in there just a picture of a standard Walmart that's very similar to the one that we have in a beach community with the white sign.
Do you feel like this represents pretty much what it would look like?
Can't see
You
very
squint
well
like I
either.
do.
That particular building doesn't have the peak
Yeah.
or the pitched roof, whatever you want to.
Did you see this one?
Miss Evie, are those your only copies?
They are. I apologize. Once again, I was.
That's okay. Can we have them?
You
then?
absolutely may.
Yeah,
The picture of and the article was in the Wall Street Journal. That's where I referenced it. But once again, I apologize. It was so late in coming up on the agenda that I was not fully prepared. So I apologize for not having that information for you. But this is, in fact, a nationwide campaign for them to test new colors.
Is that dark gray that your picture portrays, is that accurate for what the law?
Ma'am, I just now realized that they were going to be doing gray. I didn't even know that. So that's what their corporate are. I don't know that that's the case. So.
Donna, you can see the color chips.
Right.
But it's not, I don't think that darkest gray is intended to be the primary color.
No,
They have
it's the
accents.
darkest gray is only used as an accent, typically behind sign badge areas. The lighter grays are what will be the main focal of the building.
I still think it's inappropriate for an urban setting, but I don't really see this color scheme in a beach community. Once again, I'm going back to what the majority of developments are around Highway 98. In fact, if you look at Hardee's, I just noticed that on the way over here, the new Hardee's store is all tan with white letters, very similar to what Walmart looks like right now. So I think the board and the county is doing a good job in trying to be consistent with the developments that are coming online now, and I think that's a good way to go in the future. I understand Walmart wants to brand their store. I completely get it. But often what you want and what you need are two different things. And, this store has been open for 7 years, and they seemingly do quite well. I live very close by, so I'm pretty aware of that. All across the country, there are hundreds of communities that deal with this very thing. And they have made a stand that said, we have a standard and we want to stick to that. So I strongly encourage you in considering this issue that we maintain the standards that were set with the Walmart as it came in. I don't really see how this deviation is unique, as Mr. Carpenter pointed out earlier that in the code, that it needed to be a unique situation, which this does not in any way, I think, apply. But I just really think that we need to be very judicious, and I certainly appreciate the board's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think this drawing, so y'all don't have a larger, this drawing has PB2 and y'all.
Yes, that's our drawing. Yes,
this
sir.
is y'all drawing. Okay, so the color chips on here, this top one is identified as Gauntlet Gray. And Gauntlet Gray in this drawing is on the two low bays with one has windows and one looks like it's maybe the little wall to the right or the east of the front doors.
Yes.
So that the area around the front doors is the area, these two low wings are the areas being painted this darkest gray.
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe there's a sign over the entrance.
David, can you see what you're?
Yes. I'm sorry. Hold on a second.
That's different than what's here.
This is the page that I believe goes with the deviation request.
Is back here?
Yeah. So, Bonnie, you've got those ones here.
Oh, this is confusing.
So, am I correct in saying that the photograph at the top of this page is a photograph of the Santa Rosa Beach
Yes, sir.
building as it exists today?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I think this image is the one, when we are considering the deviation request, this is the drawing we need to be looking at.
Down here.
Yes.
So this is not then.
That, I believe, is part of the packet. The other drawings that we were looking at are part of the.
Like this with all these
Exhibit.
gray.
Yeah.
See, these have gray. Like that looks like the colors to me.
And I don't want to speak for the applicant, but you made a reference a little while ago. I believe that the company that prepared the liquor box drawings was sort of trying to do the overall project a favor by including the blue.
Yeah, they were just trying to show you both references.
Yeah.
If you deny the colors, here's what it's going to look like with the existing colors, and vice versa.
So.
So this is.
Okay, so just to kind of keep the meeting organized here, I think staff and applicant, we've heard what we need to kind of on the overall project, both things together, both these items together. The agenda has the deviation request first. I think that's the discussion we're getting into now. So if the board is comfortable proceeding this way, I'm going to propose that we focus on the color deviation and dispose of that. And then we'll get to the liquor box expansion and dispose of that. We all
Yep.
good with that? Okay.
And the applicant's okay with proceeding without a full board?
Yes.
I would move that we would deny the request for deviation for the color blue.
Okay.
Second.
And I have one question to clarify this, but properly moved and seconded to deny the color deviation. Staff, is the color deviation for the entire packet of 4 colors presented on that page, or is it for the blue, or what's the deal?
Let's assume it's for all 4 of those colors.
Okay.
Now, again, we could continue this item to give staff and the applicant time to work out something that would be more amenable to this particular board that would not hold up the overall project.
Okay. All right.
If
Okay.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, in the spirit of discussion, did what you just heard change you all's, the maker of the motion and the second, thoughts?
The blue is what I object to the most. The grays, I'm not wild about, but I'm not totally opposed to those. But the blue, and particularly if it doesn't cover the whole thing, I think it is even worse. That it's just like a little rectangle on part of it. It takes it out of the style of the architecture, too. And
Becomes
so
part of the sign
yeah,
almost.
it does. It makes it look like it's a really big sign then on the building, and so that's what I object to about this.
Well, my sense is if we vote here in a second, that with the motion that's on the floor, this deviation request will come to an end. So if the intention is that the color scheme go back to staff and the staff work with the applicant, I think probably the best way to proceed would be to withdraw the motion in the second and consider an alternate one. But I am not in favor of the blue. I'm not in favor of the color scheme. So if a withdrawal doesn't happen, I'm going to vote against it. So
The entire color scheme?
yes.
So if we did something different than what's on the table now, we would be continuing it to allow them to bring back a totally different color scheme,
That would be my understanding.
which will be outside of their branded colors, which they're trying to get to their branded colors. Is that,
I don't know what your approved color palette is, but I think the theory being that we would try to find colors that are in your approved color palette that somewhat match our prototypical
Again,
Walmart
in
brand.
the spirit of discussing the motion, I feel that we went through a lot of thought. I don't know how many meetings worth it was and how many, with the whole sunshine thing and the way we had to come in and review the colors and expand the palette, and it was a very thorough process. And I feel like all of these colors, I believe, are among those that were looked at. The general range of these colors were looked at, and we expanded them to the level that we felt was prudent. Looking at the corridor as a whole. So I think sending it back to staff and giving them a run at this to fit within the spectrum of colors that we took a lot of time working on is appropriate.
yeah, I'm not saying that's inappropriate, but I'm also saying that even if this is real close to a color and they changed it to a blue that is in there, I still wouldn't like the overall
Okay.
color scheme because we're going to have the exact same. And I know we went to a lot of pain and difficulty multiple times just since I've been on the board of getting an overall color scheme that works on a building.
Well,
And
Even
I
very recently.
And I really dislike that it's only that rectangle.
okay.
And that's pretty, I don't know if there is one that's close.
Question for you, Mr. Carpenter. If they went back and found something within this color scheme that's permissible, would they even need to come back for
Yes,
a
sir, they
deviation?
would.
They still, it would still be a deviation?
No. it would-
Well, if they found colors that are on the approved palette,
Right.
they would not need a deviation.
Exactly.
So they could withdraw the deviation application request.
But would it come to us for approval, or would it be administratively approved by staff? This is my,
That's at your pleasure. We can do it either way.
I mean,
I mean,
this
if
is a
it-
big, this is
if
almost
they're-
like a total renovation.
I mean, you might want to see where the colors appear on the building.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's important, because of the way the code reads, and it talks about not drawing attention, and all of that, and that things need to be harmonious and flow. So just because colors are in the color palette doesn't mean it's something that works.
That's
But-
So again, go ahead,
But
Kevin.
what is the purpose of a palette if it's not allowed to be used?
That's just the way this board
It's the
works.
combination
It's the
of the colors
combination that
It's the
that are
matters.
combination.
allowed from the palette
Yeah.
that
Okay.
is
Correct.
part of your purview up
Okay.
there.
And
So I-
we've worked with a lot of applicants, so, since he's brand new, to make adjustments to a palette to make it more harmonious and work together, even if they were already within the approved colors for all of their colors.
Okay.
And that's what I'm working on here, is I want to make sure we proceed in the best way to allow the applicant a fair chance to get this to a place where we're comfortable. I'm thinking ahead. If we deny the request, certainly they could come back with colors within the approved ranges and bring that before the board, or we could give them the most options by continuing this tonight. It's going to take us to the next meeting anyway, and that way staff can take another run at this overall, and it's still under the same request.
I'm okay with that from my second's perspective, as long as we see it again.
Yeah, okay. Well, the other reason,
Yeah, I am, absolutely,
First
yeah.
is more
Okay.
important than second.
so,
I would withdraw my motion.
okay. So, we've had the motion and the second withdrawn, so that puts us back in play to
Yes.
consider continuing?
Yes.
Okay, so,
So then I would move that we continue this until the next meeting.
do we have a second?
Second.
Second,
Which-
with the thought
October
that they
5th.
have to come back to this
To
board
come back
for
here.
Oh,
approval.
yeah, absolutely, yep.
Which would be October 5 at 5 PM in this location.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue to October 5 in this location. Do we have any further comments, questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, oh, I'm sorry, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the second item, or third item, I'm sorry, on the agenda, which is the liquor box expansion. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Mac, could the, and I'm just thinking of timing, would it be possible for them to approve this, but not approve any color scheme, so that would
Yes.
come back to them later?
Yep,
And then
okay.
they could still proceed?
They could, if it be the choice of this board, approve the balance of the project, and the color scheme could come back and be added back in before we get to BCC.
Okay, I'll make just a couple of introductory observations for this item. I know at least 3 members of this board asked questions relating to parking, but as was observed, the number of parking spaces that are provided is not the purview of this board. That's the purview of the planning board, which is
Sure.
the next meeting. We asked some questions regarding drainage. Staff observed that there's no new impervious area, so that's not something that comes under the purview of this board. We clarified that the trees being removed are being replaced, therefore the project is still in compliance with the landscape regulations.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other
Is-
questions or concerns?
Technical question, is access management within our purview?
To an extent, I mean, that's typically the technical review committee and the planning commission, but you can certainly comment on that. Access is not being changed. I mean, the same entrance is there. We're adding one additional crosswalk, which in a sense removes a crosswalk that actually was never painted, but is used frequently by people going to the liquor store, not going into the main entrance to Walmart. It's being relocated closer to the entrance.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Since this is a separate item, I'm going to ask if the public has any additional comments that have not already been made. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Eby.
May I? I'm back.
Specifically, yes.
Okay, so I get the whole purview issue. And I don't want to play on words here. However, in the land development code with regard to the design review board, it does state that your obligation is to ensure high quality commercial development. And of course, that would be architecture and all the other things that go along with it. But it also talks about site planning and the means to assure the implementation and the enforcement of all of these issues is part of your purview. So encouraging safe pedestrian and vehicle travel along the corridor is part of what the Design Review Board does. I have provided you guys some documentation. I'm sorry if it was too much. But if I may, I can kind of explain to you, given the fact that I live so close to the project and I see my business is there as well. So I see quite frequently what goes on. And the initial design of the building was fine, other than it is heavily weighted to the west or the east side of the project. So even when you look at the pictures of the overview of the project, with the retention pond being on one side and this being weighted to this side of the project, the Walton County Engineering Department has stated that the majority of traffic comes in off of West Hewitt Road. The issue that we are having is that traffic, that driveway that accesses into Walmart is really only usable by about 3 or 4 vehicles. The cars pull in, they kind of stop right at the corner of the building, like they're going to start looking for where they're going to park, and then the cars begin to start backing up here. When we're talking about this project being located in that east parking lot and those 43 spaces being eliminated there, a lot of times what we have observed is, and I have even myself done the same thing, when it starts to back up here at this driveway, cars immediately turn into that little right lot, and it is full all the time. It's constantly used, whether it's 7 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night, I see that parking lot full. So it does get a lot of use. Once that building is built there, no one is going to, because of just the visual block of the building being in the way, no one's going to walk down here to the last 10 or 12 or 18 spaces and park there and walk all the way around. So that's one issue that we have. The other issue is that the driveway is just way too short. So cars get backed up here, and then cars across Dune Lakes can't get out. Cars coming down West Hewitt can't get out. The turn lane is too short. So this backs up with cars going straight across to Murphy's or turning onto West Hewitt. We've also seen several times vehicles backed up on 98 wanting to go straight, and you can't get into the turn lane if you wanted to get into Walmart. So it just becomes, it's crazy. The traffic is literally backed up every way it possibly can. I can assure you that this minor development order and the amendment to the PUD is based on 2009 traffic numbers and intersection analysis. Nothing has been done. So the traffic analysis and the parking analysis and everything else that is being put before you for this addition, this 5,000 square foot liquor store, is also being based on 2009 numbers. Now, they have, of course, made adjustments to that, but I think in terms of good design, I even suggested that possibly putting this smaller version, which of course Walmart can still build the 1,710 square feet that was within the original PUD. They can do that and come before the board and they're good to go. Without the PUD being amended, they could certainly put a very sizable store on that side of the building. Personally, this side of the parking lot is not as heavily traveled. No one uses this ingress-egress out of 98. So weighting the store on the side would not only look visually better, but it's going to help to separate the traffic for that liquor store to that side of the property, which isn't as heavily used. And it maintains this side parking lot on the very heavily side of West Hewitt Road so that people can get in and out of this project safely. You'll notice also that they have a crosswalk, as Matt pointed out, going directly across this driveway that we already have some issues with to begin with. So people have to pull in, come all the way around, park here, and walk across the driveway that we already have issues with traffic getting in and out of. My thing is that I get that the board is not the planning commission, and I get that you're not the county commission, but good design is good design. And there still is a responsibility to protect us, the community, and to represent us in a way that this long term is a good solution. So that is my biggest issue with this 5,000 square feet liquor store. Is it really necessary? Do we really need this? Why are we amending this PUD? They can build their 1,710 square feet. That's a sizable store. And if you even look at the footprint here in orange of the liquor store itself, imagine, if you will, taking that off of the side of the Walmart building and sticking it out in the parking lot like a CVS or a freestanding 5,048 square foot store would be. It gives you a much better visual perspective on how little parking there actually is within this facility. This project is way too small for 5,000 square feet. It really is. And all I'm asking is that the board consider that there is a design issue here if this 5,000 square feet is added. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Eby. I do have a question for the applicant. You mentioned in the general discussion of the project that there was an electric, I'm assuming, is it an overhead utility easement?
No, underground.
Underground utility easement? And is it within the footprint of the parking lot?
Yes, I think those were under the drive aisle. I do have the original plans here, so I can verify that.
Are the numbers that you presented to us, are those from 2009 as far as the parking, the traffic and all of that?
The parking study was just recently done, within the last month, so those are recent numbers.
What about the traffic study coming in and out of there? Was that recent?
We revised we added the traffic that will be generated by the additional square footage. And unfortunately, I didn't bring that with me, but that was submitted as a part of the minor development order.
Yes, Matt.
Matt Kirk from the Planning Department. If I could address that directly, the additional square footage generated a certain number of trips, and I don't have those right in front of me, but those additional trips were not significant enough to warrant operational improvements at the intersection. Not significant enough to warrant any additional turn lanes. We specifically asked Public Works, in addition to our contract plan review engineering company, Dewberry, if there were operational improvements that were needed. Because in the original development order, it considers, or it provides for an opportunity for the county to review operational improvements at the point of each phase approval. We do have another phase that's in review that's coming behind the Walmart building, which is a senior housing assisted living facility. We will ask them to again analyze the operational aspects of that intersection in accordance with the original PUD conditions when that project makes its way through the process. But we did specifically ask about the Walmart addition, and their response was there are no operational improvements indicated at the present time.
Okay. Mac, do you have any insight into the electric utility easement?
I haven't personally verified that, but I do understand that there's an electrical easement for underground utilities on the west side of the building that could not be covered by a building structure.
Okay.
Is there already a liquor store in there?
Yes. Yeah, with a
What
separate
size is the
entrance already.
current one?
I'm sorry?
What size is the current one?
2,000 feet?
I'm sorry?
2,000 feet?
It could be.
Is it its own separate entity inside the store, or is it just a few aisles?
No, in Florida, in spite of the attempt to change the law in the last legislative session, liquor stores that are part of other stores have to have a separate entrance, and you cannot walk from the liquor store into the retail store and vice versa by state law. That may change in the next legislative session, and we may have hard liquor on the grocery store shelves next to the bread. There was a bill that almost got passed in this this last session of the legislature that would have allowed that.
That is definitely not the purview of this.
But this liquor store at one time did hold the title to the highest per square foot annual sales of a Walmart liquor store in the United States.
And is that the reason for the?
I'm sure that's the reason they want to expand the store.
That's
Put more in.
Yeah.
okay.
Drinkers.
Yeah, it could
Well,
be about,
yeah,
but I don't have the exact number.
I'm sorry, say that if you could.
It could be about 2,000 square feet now, but I don't have the exact number.
Go ahead.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know this has nothing to do with design at all whatsoever, but will this expansion, to your knowledge, will it create new jobs? You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, this question of whether or not the expansion could be located on the west side of the building is of great interest to me, and I'm starting to detect it's of great interest to the other members of the committee. So, you know, I think that the crosswalk configuration that is concerning. I actually, and Madam Attorney, can you one more time remind me, and I apologize, I probably ask this about every third meeting. Are we allowed, or is it appropriate for us to share our experiences at these locations? Is this a quasi-judicial type hearing?
This is a quasi-judicial type hearing, but this board is a little bit unique because you do have to factor in the scenic corridor and how it looks.
The environment, okay.
So
we can talk about our experiences at this property. Is that in play? Okay.
That would be acceptable, yeah.
Okay. My father happens to be at the, just for those of you that don't know, about another 50 feet past this property line up West Hewitt is an assisted living facility. My father lives there, so I frequently go in and out of this intersection, and only rarely do I go to the Walmart itself. And I've observed some of the things that Ms. Eby mentions. The times that I have gone in the Walmart, I always park in this side parking lot because it is the easiest way. I usually use the entrance at the north end of the site because it's so congested at the entrance that has been discussed here. So, you know, I think the reality is that Walmart stores have a lot of people going in and out of them constantly, and I'm looking at this to try to decide, does this configuration make it better? Because I do agree with Ms. Eby's observation that probably far less people would try to drive north on that initial driveway. I wonder if that wouldn't make the situation better versus worse, but thinking about this located on the west side of the property, it seems like that would probably result in a more attractive building. This addition does, at the front corner of it, it's more attractive than the existing corner of the building, but at the back corner of it, I would describe it as being significantly less attractive. So I think there is some merit to studying the option of locating it on the west side of the building. You know, if the utility easement is one that existed on the property and that was imposed by Gulf Power or some other entity, that may be an easement that's simply not possible to mess with. If it's simply that's where the developer chose to put the underground electrical in the project, then, you know, that could just be a cost of doing the project to relocate that. So, but the drive aisles are the same size, so, you know, the project, it looks like it would be equally feasible. Today, as Mac observed, there is not allowed to be a connection between the interior of the building and the liquor store anyway, so that couldn't have any bearing on anything. So I hate to get in the habit of continuing everything, but I feel like there's some information I don't have that would be ideal for us to have before I could, you know, feel good about having exhausted all the logical options. So
My concern on the aesthetics of it is whether it looks like you're loading everything onto this and closer to the street and making it look cluttered and crowded with it right there and taking out that part of the parking lot. It just makes it seem to me that it is more crowded and dense looking loading it on that end as opposed to the other end that isn't right on the street, yeah. So I don't know how feasible it is to put it on the other end and what it would look like there, but that's just a question I have.
For the applicants, you mentioned earlier that you looked at the west side.
We did.
What were the factors that said, okay, we need to put it on the east side, other than the easement?
I
Electric
believe
easement.
it's the amount of utilities that are on that side. I have the old utility plan that we did for the project originally, and I don't have the electrical line going on that west side. It's going on the rear, but I think during construction it was changed. However, if the electric is not there, we have a 20-foot wide utility easement to regional utilities for a force main and a water line. And where the footprint would lie, we'll also have a roof drain siphonic manhole. There are grease traps that would be real close to the footprint. So I think just the combination of those things is why we chose not to put it on that side.
Okay, another question, if I might. Coming back onto the east side of the building, the configuration of the driveway is, it seems like the entrance driveway into the Walmart property is perhaps further south than it needs to be. Is there a reason that it's not lined up with the driveway across the front of the building? And where I'm going with this comment is that it seems like maybe we could get perhaps a couple cars more queuing for both the turn lane into the property as well as cars coming out of the property if the driveway into the property were slightly farther north. Is there a reason that it's offset that way?
It may have been approved in the master plan. The location may have been.
Okay.
I don't remember why we had it not perfectly aligned, but that's the only thing I can think of is that location may have been previously approved by as a part of the PUD.
Okay. We'd be hitting 4 for 4 with continuations if pass the gavel here. Go ahead, Donna.
I just have a quick question. On your letter, you state that there have been 130 accidents in 19 months in that location?
Yes, ma'am. That's from the Walton County Sheriff's Office.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I had Michael Mikowski. He does the crime analysis for Walton County Sheriff's Department. He was nice enough to run the traffic incidents reports and the crime reports for the area, and that would be from Mac Bayou to 30A because that's where we're now seeing our traffic back up. It's typically backed up from about 30A and then over to Mac Bayou. 130, he said actually there were more, but he said I would stick with that, and I can certainly make that report available to you. But 130 in the last 19 months.
On 98 from Mac Bayou to 30A?
Correct. Most of those being at Hewitt Road and Mac Bayou. Yeah.
So was that from people turning into the Walmart or turning off at 98?
Various incidences. It wasn't uncommon for us in the spring to hear the ambulance every morning coming to that location. We just kind of went, oh, there's another wreck down at the corner. So I don't have the specifics for you. I wish I could. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that is the information. He ended up having to give me the info verbally by phone because I was out of town. So, but he can certainly provide that report for you.
Did you say Hewitt Road and Mac Bayou, or did you say Hewitt Road and 98? Or the majority?
Well, 98. But for instance, there's been, I think, 2 that were rather serious at Dune Lakes Drive and Hewitt Road, which is the road that intersects across from Walmart off of West Hewitt. That's an area where there's a lot of people who are now cutting off of 98 and taking that apartment road and then trying to dump out into Walmart there. Also, we have an enormous amount of traffic on West Hewitt because they had been doing some work on the bridge on East Hewitt, so it was shut down for a while, and there's a lot of construction and development going on West Hewitt itself. So people kind of fly down through there, and when they start to get backed up, people just don't pay a lot of attention. So there's been 1 or 2 serious accidents there, right at the intersection of Walmart. So.
But the report from the sheriff's office was from Mac Bayou Road to 30A on Highway 98?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So it
And
just
then he
wasn't-
also specifically, if I remember right, I think what he was going to do is target each individual main intersection there, so it would be relative to the conversation.
Thank you.
I'd like to know specifically at that intersection and turning into those accidents versus, that seems to be a wide range of accidents for this particular issue. It doesn't seem to really fit just what we're talking about. I mean, it fits, but I'm saying I'd like to know specifically, how many were because somebody was trying to get to Walmart, not so much, they were trying to get to Murphy's or trying to get to Donut Hole or, wherever.
Walmart will be paying a proportionate fair share for the additional trips. Just so you know, that will go towards making improvements.
What improvement?
A proportionate fair share.
Okay.
So it's
To make
it's
what improvement?
for transportation improvements. It's a
Okay.
fee that's assessed to developers for deficiencies in the road system, but that's assessed by the BCC through their approval process.
Okay, Donna, did you have another question? Okay. Any other members of the committee? Okay, I think we've covered public comment. We're at the point we need to make a decision about where we're going.
I think we ought to have them review what actually is on the other side of that building to determine whether or not it's possible to build it on the other side. I mean, do you know specifically for sure right now, tonight, that there's no way you could put that on the left side of that building?
It's something we could consider further. It's been a few years since we considered that, so I don't want to say for sure no, but I know it was not the best option, and I do remember we looked at it, but
I think we could give them another chance to look at it. Come back to it.
Mac, is this a minor DO or a major DO?
This is a minor development order
Okay.
based on the.
So this won't hold
Based
up.
on the deviation approved in the original PUD, that
Gotcha.
all projects underneath the conceptual PUD would be processed as minors regardless of size.
So would this hold up the PUD?
Now, the PUD amendment would still go forward, because that's simply reallocating, commercial intensity from one phase to another, to this particular phase, to allow this, to be approved as a minor development. That process will continue, and that has to be in front of all of the rest of this anyway. So if we do continue tonight, we'll continue next week at the Planning Commission to October, but the PUD amendment is out in front of all of this already. I think that is on Thursday nights, next Thursday night's BCC agenda.
Or planning commission?
Excuse me?
Planning commission agenda?
Planning Commission, yes, Planning Commission.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we continue this until the next meeting, give them an opportunity to review the land there and determine whether or not it can be moved to the other side.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we've got a motion and a second, so we can take comment, of course, on that. Yes, sir. Would you come forward, please?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Fred Tricker, Tricker. If there's going to be consideration to maybe moving the liquor store to the other side, shouldn't we hold up on the planning commission meeting till we've had a chance to look at it?
We will
Mr. Chair?
have to.
Consider it?
We'll have to.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
It is, I believe, a requirement that the DRB takes action before it could go on to the planning commission.
Okay, all right,
Yes, sir.
great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Attorney, I wrote down three particular things that I would like to hear from staff about at the next meeting. I don't know if they need to be included in the motion or not, but I.
No,
if
you can just give direction
kind
to
of read
staff.
it. Okay.
And to the applicant.
I think that one of them was included in the motion. I would like to hear relatively detailed information about the utility easements on the west side of the building. I would like to see alternate entry drive configurations if there is nothing restricting that. And Mac, am I describing that sufficiently? It's the driveway from West Hewitt into the east side of the property. It's immediately adjacent and part of the crosswalks and all that. To whether that could be reconfigured so that some of the ingress and egress concerns might be better addressed. I think the awkward configuration going in there may be part of the problem. And then the last item, and I don't have a full understanding of what the overall PUD includes, but whether or not there might be other site locations where a 5,000 square foot project could be accommodated. Just as an example, I've seen some grocery stores where the liquor store is actually a separate building on a separate out parcel, on an out parcel basically on the property. I don't know if the flexibility exists to do something like that here, but it seems like the common thread of all three of those concerns is the drive configuration off of West Hewitt into the property seems to me to be related to the concerns around this project.
And this particular drive configuration was part of the original development. It does not line up exactly with the Dune Lake Boulevard drive that was added a little bit later. There might be some opportunity to properly align those. But we'll take a look at that too.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, Madam Attorney, did I capture that in a way that's acceptable? Okay, very good. Okay, in that case, any further questions or comments? I think we're ready to vote. Okay, all in favor of the continuation as proposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, staff, are we ready for item number 4?
5.
I'm sorry. Number not too shabby
Oh,
building
I'm
sign?
sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
Sorry.
Trying to rush on through.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The not too shabby building sign, reviewed by Tim, of course, requesting approval for a building sign measuring 2 feet by 27 feet for a total of 54 square feet of the future land use of Coastal Center. Tim indicates the proposed building sign meets the minimum technical requirements of the scenic corridor standards.
Okay, thank you, Mac. Yes, ma'am.
Question for Mac, there are photographs and little things pointing to both the building sign and the monument sign for this on our graphic. But our agenda says building sign. Are we doing both or just a building sign?
The actual monument sign already exists. Staff can approve the change to the copy on the monument sign. The building sign does require this board's approval.
Okay. Mr. Applicant, do you have any presentation or comments you'd like to add?
Other than it's compliant?
Okay. Karen, do you need his name for the record? You've got it, and the application. Okay, very good.
Just curious, the white,
Yes, ma'am.
They look large and boxy to me. Really large.
is that to scale on that building? Do you know?
Relatively. I wouldn't say it's exact.
Surprised it fills up that whole top part like that. But I don't,
Well, it probably does. That falls away a little bit.
yeah.
Scale was pulled off of one of their front doors.
I think this looks a little bigger than it actually will be
I would agree.
on the, versus the size of the building facade. I think. I don't know that, but it's just my gut.
is the, Mac, is the length of the sign kind of hitting the maximum? Is that why the Marisol, I'm actually not exactly sure what the last name is. Gullo, maybe? Gullo, okay. That looks a little cramped in there. Is it, I guess, the overall proportion?
Yeah, because it's 54 square feet and it's 27 feet long by 2 feet high. So
Yeah.
it is totally maxed out. But, well, I guess it's a little cramped with the "by," but that's exactly what her name looks like on the monument sign too, so. It's a cramped little font.
Oh, and I'm not actually referring to the font as much as I'm referring to the
closeness of the
portion that reads by Marisol Gullo
Yeah,
is very, very close to the word shabby.
yeah.
The building is relatively, compared to some buildings in the corridor, relatively close to the street. I don't know if losing an inch or two off the vertical dimension of not too shabby would be a problem in terms of legibility from the roadway to generate a little bit more elbow room.
Are these letters, do you know if they're the same size as the sign that was up there before?
I do not. I think these are a little bit taller, but
Tall,
that's,
okay.
I'm not sure.
Because that was a much shorter sign, this way.
Brocante.
Yeah,
Brocante, yeah, it was just the one word.
and then they had signs.
So if
on
they were that
parts
tall, it
of the
would
other.
have looked really weird.
Yeah.
The Marisol Gullo is so cramped in there, I wonder if it's even
It's a hard
worth
font to
worth
read.
putting in there and worth. I mean, I'm not sure it's legible at all from the road. It looks kind of like a squiggle from the even in this graphic where it may be oversized. It's pretty impossible to read what that says.
It's more of a signature as opposed to actual
Yeah.
marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Leah would agree that it's probably a little larger than it should be in that rendering.
I guess the other option would be to make the by Marisol Gullo a little smaller and reduce how cramped it is. It is.
Well, we could create a little space there if that was.
Yeah.
what you guys-
That'd be my strong preference. Is the sign is, one of our, I believe one of the criteria is that the signs, and don't take this the wrong way, sir, but that they look professional. And when something's cramped in there like that, that to me doesn't hit that standard. So my comment would be, give us a little. Do whatever you have to do, stay within the overall criteria, which I guess would be either shrink the size of Not Too Shabby and or shrink the size of Marisol Gullo to get it a little more comfortable.
I
Do
would
you ever
s-
think about doing upper lowercase, so it's not like all those big O's popping out at you?
I know, I'm not a fan of.
You don't imagine,
Big
what's the
O's.
actor? I heard you say a second ago, Lee. I can't remember the actor's name, the comedian. That was one of his catchphrases.
What?
You didn't say that a second ago? I'll think of his name in a second. Adam Sandler.
I wasn't thinking about Adam.
Okay.
But that is their logo,
Not
that all caps.
Oh, I did say that.
That's-
Yes, that's him.
Yeah.
I wasn't given a tremendous amount of leeway.
Yes, understood.
But yeah, the B from by shouldn't be under the part of the Y from shabby.
Yeah.
And I would just, since we're picking at this, I would say, in the interest of what you referred to, of it looking professional, I think from a relation standpoint between the two parts of the sign, I would rather see the Not Too Shabby be a little bit smaller than the by Marisol Gullo a little smaller, because that's gonna make it even look,
Harder to read? Yeah.
well, not hard to read, but just more kind of stuck on there.
Okay.
Not a part of the overall sign. You follow me?
Yeah.
That's just my
Could I ask a question?
suggestion.
Of course, on the main ID sign, the ground sign, we've got a combination of uppercase and lowercase.
Oh, that's a good point.
That
Yep.
is a good point. Maybe I snuck that in on her because I didn't like it.
Well, here we go. How about this? How about we say that we approve it if the building sign matches the monument sign? And the monument sign's already there.
There is supposed to be some continuity between your sign
Yep.
family.
That would look
Mac-
way better.
Mac
Is-
That would
comes
shorten
in
the
with
text and give
Yeah.
us space between the by and the Y and Chevy
Yeah.
as well.
And is the, just to make sure, the photo, the monument sign is a photograph, or is that a graphic that you put together?
That is a rendering.
It's a rendering, okay.
That's
But it's
actually-
it's
in
been
process.
approved. Okay. All right, well, does
I
someone
like
want to make a
that.
motion to that effect?
So moved.
Okay. Karen, was that fair to you? Did you capture that?
Make the building sign match.
The building sign would need to be upper and lowercase, matching the monument sign.
And then having space between the Y in Chevy and the B in by, so that they're clearly separate words.
I think we're comfortable with staff confirming the redesign.
Yeah.
All right, we got a motion to, oop, go ahead, Donna. Sorry.
Question, sorry.
Okay.
The capital letters, are they still gonna be 2 feet tall? Or do,
If it
No
fits.
problem with it.
you okay with it? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion. I think I heard a second. Did I hear a second? Who seconded?
I didn't hear it, but I'll second it.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Lee seconded. Any further comments by the board? Any public comment? Okay, in that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anybody need a break?
No, let's go.
All right.
Rock on.
I'm good, no, I'm good.
Deference to our
No, I'm good.
esteemed
Yeah, you
attorney.
okay? No, I'm good tonight. I've
Okay.
been drinking my water earlier.
Yeah. Okay, number 5, Applebee's building sign.
And this one was also reviewed by Tim Brown. It's an application requesting approval of a building sign measuring 33 inches by 148.375 inches for a total of 30 square feet. Tim indicates the building sign meets the minimum requirements of the scenic order standards.
All right, everyone see the graphic? So is it fair to characterize this, the brand is getting rid of the neighborhood grill and bar and putting a little apple in its place?
That's correct.
All right. Looks good. I think corporate, that's the corporate thing these days, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask a question before we move on. Is somebody here representing?
Yeah, I'm Steve Norton with Heim Signs.
Hey, Steve. That blue accent is that same blue we were dealing with a few minutes ago? Kind of, sort of?
I was told by Tim that colors on the sign, actually, there's no blue on that sign. I don't know.
You talking about the building?
Yeah, I
What are
don't
you
know
talking
what-
about?
Applebee's?
Or not? Or that's just my eye?
Oh, I think that may be a dimension line. Oh, you mean that on the existing building? That's a good question. I don't know. I think that may be black. It looks blacker
I
in
think
my
it's
screen.
green.
I'm only here to talk about the
So
sign.
Yeah.
which one are we?
All we're doing-
What is it changing to?
Okay, all we're doing here
Existing?
is this is existing. They're taking
Oh.
that off, and they're putting a new sign.
They're putting the apple in.
With the
okay.
apple and the
And so
Applebee's.
is that black or is that blue or what is it?
I think it's the same as what. Oh, I see what. Very
The-
good
the
point.
two-
It looks like they changed
It's the
colors.
same. Look at the different colors in the two photos.
Yeah.
Like the red compared to the red, I think it's just,
No, I'm not talking about those. I'm
And the
talking
door
about.
is
I know,
dark.
but
Yeah, it
I'm
looks like
saying I
the
think it's
building
the
color
same.
changes, but
I think it's dark green.
I think it's
Yeah.
the photograph.
Do you know what color that is?
No.
I'm here for the signs.
He's
I don't
here
know
for the
nothing
sign.
about the building.
Yeah, we're not. You put it this way. We're not approving.
We're not.
The
We're not
So
approving
we're just
that.
dealing
for
with the
the
sign.
sign.
Just the sign.
Just the sign.
Oh, okay. Well,
That right
fine
there.
with that then.
Okay.
That's
Any,
like I said, it actually looks better.
yeah, I think it looks better. So,
It looks better.
okay. Any other? Go ahead, Lee.
Just one quick question. Do you think they'd be willing to drop that sign down a little bit? It's up in the top of that space right now. If
That's
it
what
were,
they asked for. I don't know if they
if
would
it
be
were
willing
centered,
to.
it would look better, I think. But
I don't know how that.
I'm so excited to see an improvement versus a,
Yeah, have y'all seen that sign lately? It is pathetic.
Yeah. This
The
one
neighborhood
actually-
bar and grill is all peeling. Yeah, it's an eyesore. This picture doesn't do it justice. This looks good. It doesn't look near this good. So we would be making major improvements to the facade of that building, I promise you.
You see how it's kind of looks like
Yeah.
it's floating up toward the top?
Yeah, and I would move that we approve it if they will center it further down on the facade of the building, so that it's equidistant
You follow
between
that,
the
Matt?
top and
You see what we're talking
Center
about?
between the.
With all due respect,
between the top of the awnings and the top of the.
with all due respect, how is that violating anything on the code? It's not?
It's not, it's a
Okay,
suggestion
okay.
from
All right.
us to make it look
It's
better.
just a
Aesthetics.
suggestion. Okay.
And we actually can require
I know.
things that,
I know, that's the job.
Okay, so do we have a motion to that
That was the
effect?
motion, yeah, the motion is that, I move that we approve it, conditioned on the sign being placed equidistant between the top of the building and the top of the awnings.
Great, okay. Do you have a second? Probably motion and seconded. Any further comments?
I may have a technical reason for not doing that. I'm not positive. But
Okay.
no, let's go with it.
Okay.
I think it works.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you,
nice-
sir.
nice
You
evening.
too.
Exciting.
Have a safe drive.
It's better, the drive's better now than tourists have
I
gone.
know, everybody keeps talking
Yeah,
about their stuff.
absolutely.
Don't worry, evacuators are coming.
Huh?
The evacuators are coming to replace
Well,
it.
yeah.
Okay, that brings us to item number 6, and it looks like we have 4 items that are all related. Staff, would you like to present all 4 of them at once?
We can do them individually if you like, or we can do them all together. I mean, it's a package of signs on one development.
Yes.
It's what?
It's a group of signs on.
Oh, is
one-
easier separately? Yeah, okay.
One development, but
We
there
will do it
are
separately.
individual applications.
Okay, we're going to go through these one at a time.
The first one is the monument sign C1. This is proposed as measuring 101.5 inches by 113 inches for a total of 79.65 square feet. Tim indicates this sign meets the minimum category. Now, I have one question which I was going to ask the applicant. It appears that these are internally illuminated as opposed to externally illuminated. Now, I know we have,
Like the cabinet, it's a cabinet sign that's internally illuminated. That won't work.
Was this project approved at a meeting I missed? The color? The outside of the building?
Yes.
That's not quite the right color.
It's not, David, this is
What are you guys
actually,
doing?
this is actually one of the ones I was thinking about when I said we worked really hard to get the colors. She brought the actual swatches. That
Okay.
is a very muted green. It's almost like the walls in here, but even more muted.
And we put the.
It's not that bright dark
it's-
green.
The
It's nice.
Munsell,
Yeah.
numbers
Okay.
in the final order.
Yeah,
just
we
so
did
we're
put the
clear.
Munsell numbers in.
All right.
It's not even that green. It's like half that intense green on the walls, would you say?
Kind of a mossy, yeah, it's not, it was nice.
It was a nice green,
Okay.
but the colors on the renderings are hideous.
Wow. Yeah.
All right, if we could get gas to be that actual price.
Yeah, now that would be
that would
great.
be great.
But since it's not, can we ask them to change that from yellow to something else?
Yeah, because
That yellow
if
is
that doesn't
hideous.
scream, come over here and see me,
Yeah.
I'm drawing attention to myself.
That's hideous.
I thought you said that that's not what it really looks like.
The yellow isn't either,
No,
yeah,
the
but we don't, do we have the
green.
swatch? Do we have the swatches for the colors for the sign?
That's a big bird.
But the only yellow on the building at all is that little tiny bit in their logo on their sign.
Oh,
And so to
so
me,
it
this,
doesn't go with the building.
this just does not match the architecture of the building to me. The yellow doesn't.
I would think it would need to be the color of the body of the building.
That would be
Agreed.
better.
Yeah, so the pale green?
Yep.
Okay.
No, well, the,
No,
Well, we're,
No,
and,
the-
and
the body
not-
of the
yeah.
building.
the beige.
By the way,
Like
remember, we're
beige.
taking this one at a time, and the first one is the,
Oh,
the
sorry.
monument, I'm sorry.
Or the
This is the monument
monument
sign, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is this number 1?
It has the graphic for the building sign on it
Yes.
as well, but it has the monument sign too.
Okay, that would've got me confused.
Number one is the monument sign.
Okay.
Or one of them, there are two monument signs. So they can have two monument signs because of the length of the parcel, is that what it is? Matt?
They've got two streets,
Yeah, it's on the corner.
Oh,
Building sign.
393 and 98.
Yeah.
so if you're on a corner, you can have two monument signs?
It says front view and back view.
Yeah, but there are two
There's
monument
one-
signs
There are two?
on the agenda.
And let's see.
C1
here's-
and
sorry.
C2.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I think the electronic, the graphics got reversed orders, so. Kevin, you mind if I grab your book one more time?
Nope.
Thank you, sir.
That's two
Yeah,
monuments.
there are actually two monument signs.
They're very close together.
But one of them doesn't have the graphics for a monument sign, it has a building sign graphic.
That's what, okay, so yeah, I think it's.
We've got one graphic for the monument sign, but there are two of them.
They're very close together. Did you see that? That's a pretty narrow, fairly narrow
They do look very
parcel.
close together.
You see them on the placement map, C1
Yeah.
and C2? Can they do that, really? I've never seen a development on a corner lot that had
With
a monument sign on
down
each
the-
road.
Yeah.
Oh, this might be.
I don't know that we have enough frontage for that.
I bet you they've got total 400 feet. So they're,
Yeah.
I thought that was 400 feet along
Along
98.
98, because I don't think they have 400 feet.
Because
along
that's
98.
basically two monument signs on 98 right there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
No doubt.
yeah. Yeah, that,
I mean, it's ingenuity. I appreciate their creativity.
Yeah, I'm inclined not to approve C2 at this point, and,
Mhm.
but I guess we're talking about C1, so. Sorry, Karen.
All right. So on C1 and C2 later, that's my suggestion, is that we require a different color on the background of that sign.
Okay.
And that it match a color on the building, preferably the
Where are you
tan.
seeing that, that, which one is that under, C1?
I'm not sure. Because I'm
Are
just-
your
better
books
book,
accurate? Because it's not accurate on the website.
this is what it looks like on here.
Okay, I was just making sure you guys knew which
Yeah,
one you
as
were
far as the
approving.
book.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
I think it's Sefco Monument Sign C1. No, that's
I'm on C1, because that's what we're talking about, but I don't see
Sign
the
graphics.
sign graphics.
Try
Okay.
that one.
Oh, there we go, okay.
And then it's the
thanks.
next page
Yeah.
that shows the monuments.
Okay, and this is showing the location of them.
Yes, all of the signs.
Gotcha. Okay.
And this
Sydney, I
is
believe the
98.
books are accurate.
Oh, good,
So they're-
okay.
And each one of the
See what I'm saying?
applications has the building
Uh-uh.
itself on it,
Oh, I see.
apparently, so, okay.
What is the front?
Okay, so, does someone want to make a motion that captures Lee's observations? Are we all in agreement that those are?
I will make the motion, but I'm wondering how specific we need to get, because if we need to get super specific about the body color of the sign, I can't read or don't have the numbers, EFS numbers or whatever. But my motion would be on C1 to approve the sign with the requirement that the color for the body of the sign is the same color as the main part of the body of the building, so that it matches the building. Is that,
Which appears to be that the same color.
it's like a tan, but I don't think we have those color well,
I think we do from last,
Yeah, they
when
would
we
be in
approved they'd be in the minutes from the other.
From the previous approval,
yeah.
we're talking about the green-ish color.
No, the tan.
No, the tan,
Tan.
the main body of the building.
Those are windows.
Huh?
Those are windows.
Oh, is that,
Wait,
No, not the white, but the.
Yeah, the color that's in question on the monument drawing is identified as, it's a little bit blurry, but it looks like maybe PM S1235C.
Mac, if you look at the building sign item, it's got a rendering of the building, showing the building sign.
Yeah, you're talking about the tan color?
Mhm.
Okay.
In this book, it looks yellow, but it's tan. It's like a beigey tan, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm assuming all else is accurate, that they, I mean, that it meets the code, their amount of copy and all of that.
All of that is fine, except for we need external illumination.
And that's part of my motion too, that it's illuminated externally versus internally. Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, probably best if Karen, would you like to read back the motion?
Motion to approve with the condition the color of the body of the sign is the same color as the main tan color of the building, and it is illuminated at external.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, brings us to item 7.
Which is the monument sign C2, which we didn't like to sign.
Just
And I'm not sure
without
the
having to
code
pass the
allows
gavel, I'll see if I can convince one of y'all to make a motion to deny this, and we
Which one? Two?
either deny it or continue it.
It's not
I don't
gonna
know.
take
We
a lot
want
of convincing.
Two?
to.
Two?
Yes, yep. So I guess question for staff, would we be better denying it or continuing it and learning next month that it is or is not allowed?
We can do either one you'd like.
If we deny a sign that is allowed by code, are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah, that might be a little tricky. But,
Yes, that's why I'm trying to read where does it say how many they,
Wait.
oh, one sign
One
shall be
sign on
allowed for
98.
400
Okay.
foot of scenic corridor highway frontage.
So what we think is they thought they had 400 feet of street frontage on 2 streets. That doesn't cut the mustard.
That's correct.
I would
So-
just, whoever makes the motion, just
Reference
state
that.
clearly that that's the reason for the denial, that they don't have 400 feet of frontage on 98.
Okay.
Or over 400,
Right.
technically.
Okay. Ms. Moore, would you like to
I'd
make
like
that
to make that motion to deny, based on the fact that they do not have over 400 feet, linear feet of highway frontage along 98.
I'll second that.
Okay, properly motioned and seconded. Any other comments? There are no people in the audience to comment, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, item number 8.
Which would be the CEFCO building sign A, measuring 3 feet by 11 feet for a total of 33 square feet. And indicates this meets the minimum requirements.
What's that? What did you say?
It meets the minimum requirements of the scenic corridor standards.
So are
This would be
these,
sign A in the graphic one at the top, which looks just like sign B.
and
Where are
they are they appropriately lit?
They can be internally illuminated.
The bottom says night view,
Yeah,
so
that's
I
what
guess
I'm
the,
confused on.
I think they're just saying that it's not, well, that is
It's not gonna look
strange.
yellow?
It's not illuminate, the yellow part is not illuminated. I'm assuming that's what they're saying, but I'm not
so
sure.
the letters and the 3 stripes are illuminated and the others are not.
Right, that's what it looks like.
Okay. And then what material are the letters? The letters, this is conforming, this is a channel.
Channel letters.
I
It
wish-
says front lit channel letters.
Mr. Carpenter, I got a question. It seems like we have a couple of, or the majority of the things that are coming are regional, national or regional chains, right?
Yes.
As a general rule. Shouldn't they be able to provide something, because they pretty much all have the same pattern when they build a store, same footprint, or whatever the case may be. Shouldn't they be able to provide an actual picture of what it's gonna look like during it, because based on what they already did? You kinda see what I'm saying? So we're not looking at a graphic versus a, I'm just saying, because like.
Generally, we do encourage the applicant, and I think we do have requirements in the code that they bring, especially the colors,
Right.
actual samples so you can see the colors.
No, I guess
If
what
this
I'm saying
building
is.
already existed,
they would typically take a picture of the building
Yeah.
and superimpose the proposed sign on the actual building. In this case, this building isn't constructed yet.
No, I mean, that's not what I'm saying.
But if they have another one,
Yeah,
Well-
do they have another one somewhere else that they can take a picture of and send us what it's gonna look like? Because most of them have the same
well,
design requirements.
so here's the thing. Usually, to meet our code, they have to change their normal design. So most of the time, they probably don't have another building that looks just like the one they're building
Okay.
was. See what I'm saying?
Okay,
Because we've got pretty
okay.
strenuous guidelines. But if they did, that would be really
Yeah,
nice.
rather than scenographic and,
Yep.
you know, because we're trying to figure out what green is, you know, is it pea green or, you know, is it?
But even with
Big
photographs,
bird yellow or, you know?
even with photographs, you don't see that. That's why we require those color swatches. That's when you really
Yeah,
see what the
even
color is.
photocopying does not represent the actual color that's in
Okay.
the Munsell
Right.
book.
Okay.
That's why it
Alright, so,
costs
so this is sign A.
$1,200.
Just, wait. Alright, so sign A is on the front of the building.
Sign A is on the front of the building above the entrance.
This always confused me the last time. Where is this thing? Oh, here it is. Got it. I got it. All right. I'm getting confused with this stuff tonight. I'm tired.
And this sign fits all the requirements as far as what it's made out of and everything.
Well, I think we have a question. Dave, did you see it was?
It has an odd, it doesn't, the graphic representation of the section, it looks like it is a conventional channel letter, but it has a note, describes it as front lit channel letters, LED illuminated. So I'm wondering if there's a technology going on that we're not familiar with.
And maybe that
I think
technology
means
is
that
what
the light
causes the
shines
night
out
view.
through the front of the sign, as opposed to,
What we mean by front lit, which is
yeah.
facelit. I guess it's different
We
than
have had,
facelit.
we have had
Yes.
signs that were reverse channel lit, where the sign is sort of a halo around
Yes,
the
okay.
actual channel letters,
Okay.
where it's reflected back on the face of the sign.
Okay.
Um,
Front lit versus, I guess I see. Okay. Graphically, it appears to be what we are cool with. It's a,
And these are shown as channel letters in Tim's scenic quarter report.
yeah, acrylic face.
It really doesn't say a whole lot about the illumination on this one. Where are you seeing that front lit? What?
In this detail, I
Oh,
just
right
had the
here?
benefit of looking at, I can actually read what it says on the computer, but it's showing an acrylic face, LEDs mounted to the inside of the channel letter. And again, it just threw me to see front lit. When I hear front lit, I think of a sign that is lit by a lamp sitting out in front of the sign shining back at it, but that's
But isn't
maybe
that
architectural
allowed?
terminology versus sign terminology.
I think that's allowed on building signs.
Yes, yes it is.
It's allowed.
Yeah, I
Oh,
found
you're
it.
just trying
I've
to
never
figure
heard
out
of
what it is.
I've never heard of a front lit channel letter before, but again, that may be a sign industry term, but a face lit or something front lit is you have the light
Alright.
here and you shine it back at it. So anyway,
So this is the one on the front of the building. I don't see any problems with it. Anybody
I move,
have any problems with
I
it?
think we should look good.
I move we approve it.
Second.
Okay, motioned and seconded properly. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I guess for the minutes, or for the recording, let that everyone. There's no audience, so I'm not asking for public comment because there's no audience. So okay, since I got in trouble for that last time. Okay, item number 9, the last item since we've continued item number 10 already.
And this also
Sign
was
B.
Sevco Building Sign B, reviewed by Tim. This is a 3-foot by 11-foot building sign totaling 33 square feet. And this particular sign appears on the awning over the gas pumps.
Motion to approve the sign.
Second.
Okay, properly motioned and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Both of them.
Both of us.
Just kidding. Colleen.
Okay, that takes care of all the items on the agenda. Are there any further topics for the, okay, Ms. Moore?
I have one suggestion for staff. Well, first of all, question. Is there a reason behind the order of the agendas in general?
Typically, it would be the order of application submittal. We typically put the deviations in front of the project. That
If it relates
depends
to
on the
it.
deviation.
Here's my suggestion,
Okay.
if it's possible. These poor people with these signs that practically met code and we zipped right through, had to sit through that whole thing. And they would have had to sit through the farmer's market thing, God forbid, too. I just wish if it's something that meets code and it's quick, like a sign, it's not a full site plan that we're approving, full
Try to
development.
move those easier ones up to the front of the agenda.
Yeah, to get these
Great
people
idea.
out of here. They
We
sit
can-
here for
We
hours.
can
great.
certainly look at doing that.
That would be great if we could start doing that, just for their sake. Doesn't help us, but we're still stuck.
We can't do it on the consent agenda, can we?
No. Because we do end up finding little things like tonight, the monument sign.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. That one.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Any problem with that? Okay.
Second.
I don't think we have to vote. We stand adjourned. Wake everybody up.
You don't have to have a second, but you have to vote.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
Okay,
you
on
vote
the,
on motion to adjourn.
okay, all in favor? Any opposed?
All right.
David, you got in trouble again.
Yep, I did. I'm, hey,